Hi, Marianne.
Hey, Leslie.
How you doing tonight?
I'm great.
Good, good. It is still November, good people, and we are going to talk about bulbs, but we are not alone.
We are not alone. We've been forced to bring a guest on,
He forced us.
just because, people don't want to listen to just the two of us. And I can understand that to some extent. And he whined a lot about it. And so we're going to have a guest today, and it's going to be actually my very, very esteemed by some people and my very good friend, truly, Scott Beuerlein from the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Gardens. He is the director of horticultural outreach there and general man about town all over the country, speaking to many venues, some of which I haven't spoken to yet. So, what's that all about? And he's just a generally extremely good natured guy, aren't you, Scott?
I'm affable. I am 100% affable.
That makes it good for outreach, but come on, that's kind of a weak title. Director of outreach? What, like, do you have flexible elbows? I don't, what is that?
All right, I'm not affable anymore. No, that's a perfectly good title. What's wrong with it? Come on.
I don't know. I just haven't heard it before, and I wanted to give you a hard time. So we're going to talk about bulbs today. And by the time y'all listen to this, you might have planted all your bulbs, but you might not have, and you might have done it wrong, as Scott said a minute ago. But there is a good chance that you have, and in that case, we apologize. We are sincerely sorry for our tardiness, but I still think you can get some good information. But what kind of things do you think we should talk about, Marianne?
Well, I think we're going to be talking about design, how to put those bulbs in, and different ways of doing so. And we're all, I'm sure, going to have some very different ideas about this. Scott does a lot of mass bulb planting. I want to talk about that, the merits of that, and where it goes well and where it might not. And I know that you last year did a bulb spiral, or was it the year before you did a bulb spiral?
It was the year
Am
before,
I
and
remembering that
gee,
wrong?
was that fun. I had a beautiful slide of it as I did a presentation today to the Lynchburg Garden Clubs, the Hillside Garden Club and the Garden Club of Lynchburg, and they were all like, woo. Well, they weren't, but maybe in their heads they were. Maybe in my imagination, they were very impressed.
I'm sure they were. 100%.
Well, I'm glad you got some positive feedback on that because I'm not going to give you as much as they might have. I'm not a super big fan, but we can discuss that. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about naturalizing, not naturalizing your bulbs, but more naturalistic patterns in design. And then, of course, some things about where do we get our bulbs and what are we looking for in a bulb and how long can they sit out in the garage anyway and all those things.
All right, so the master of huge bulb plantings is sitting right here with us, Scott Beuerlein. So tell us, Scott, what do you do at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden?
But okay, to set it straight, I'm sort of the appendix of the bulb planting. I'm just sort of tagging along and hoping I don't get completely removed. Full credit goes to my colleagues, Steve Foltz originally, and who is still director, and then Kira Back did the designs for a long time, and now Tosh Tobias is doing the designs. Of course, we're in a zoo with close to 2 million visitors a year, and we're going for the big crowd pleasers. So it's almost all tulips. We do put some daffodils in every year, and more minor bulbs. Paul Colazar, who's doing that at the zoo. But the 110,000 bulbs that people come and expect to see every year, it's full blast tulip color, full saturation. A few of the like fancy, cool little boutique bulbs, but mostly just the standards. And we plant them in big groups, as many as maybe 500 or 1,000 in a single grouping. Maybe not 1,000, maybe 500, but and we basically keep it simple: warm color beds, cool color beds, a few contrasty things. But year after year, it works.
Well, who gets to decide the color strategies? It does it change every year?
It changes some every year. Tosh is the one who orders the bulbs, and they come in big crates, and we take them out there, and basically It's designed on the fly. Most of it's done with a broomstick. So she'll go through and draw off a section where a particular color will be, and then on to the next one and on to the next one. By doing it as many years as we have, we know what works and what doesn't. So it's pretty easy. The funny thing, the tragic thing, the thing that kind of like is always nipping at our heels and keeping us humble is towards the end of the bulb planting for the beds out by the roads and different places. We just take what's left, mix them all together, and plant them out there. And danged if that's not what people seem to enjoy the most.
The totally unplanned part.
Right.
That's too good.
Still, those are the ones that are just sort of thrown together. Those are still on mass, right?
Yeah, absolutely huge masses.
But people love that, just sort of spectacular chaos.
Just spectacular chaos. Exactly. We go for a full month of bloom. So there's the early, mids, and lates, and that's part of the strategy as well. And in those mass zany chaos beds, somehow that even kind of works.
So these are all tulips. Do you do other bulbs as well?
Well, I apologize. Some hyacinths are thrown in there with the tulips as well. But the other bulbs we do are daffodils and minor bulbs, which go in more of the permanent beds, in the woodland, the little gappy areas where we can throw some color in and make it fun and different and exciting. As you know, like the tulips go in. Now they're working on the tulips right now. They come out after they're finished and the annuals go in, and then the annuals finish about now and we start putting tulips. It's one big cycle, very steady work. Was it job security?
So, so I want to hear a little bit of the dirty laundry here, Scott, surprisingly. I want to know what happens to all of those bulbs after the displays, because I know you're putting in a huge amount of annuals afterwards and even more spectacular, beautiful chaos. But all of those tulips, what happens to them? Do you take out the daffodils as well? What do you save and what do you decide to chuck? And how do you chuck them if you chuck them?
And what's your address so we can all come at that time and get what we want?
I don't want his spent tulip bulbs.
But people do. We either give them away or sell them very cheap at the end.
Oh,
All the rules have been broken. They've been pulled up before the leaves are completely done. But we can't wait. We've got to get those annuals in. We can't sit there watching dead foliage forever. So we pull them and clean them up and give them away or sell them very, very cheap. And people love it. I mean, they're calling us weeks ahead of time asking when we're going to be selling these tulips. And then when they get them, they plant them. And again, the rules are broken. They're planting them when they get them. Maybe they hold on to them till fall. I don't know. And we don't promise anybody anything.
I've found that's always best.
Yeah, you've made a lifetime of it, but yeah. um, but
Cheeky.
yeah. But people have told us very, very good success stories of how they've performed for a long time for them. And this is not a good area for many, many years of success with tulips. That we don't have the right climate, the right soil. They shouldn't do well, and normally they don't. But if people get 3 years out of them, they're happy, and some people get even more.
Does either of you like the look of a tulip that has been in the ground a couple of years? So it's not the huge, beautiful Darwin thing that we bought, but it actually is kind of petering out and it's kind of more, I don't know, human scaled. It's
2 leaves.
Yeah, or
I like them almost sometimes a little bit more, like depending on the setting.
You always like the underdog, though.
I do, yeah. And it's just more human. They become more natural looking, and they're still very beautiful flowers and beautiful colors, but it's reduced down to like this withering, aged man. I'm describing myself. But it has its own appeal, especially I think in like small groupings, not like a big mass, but like just a smattering of maybe 5 to 15 tucked in a little corner somewhere.
I have a question for both of you because, Scott works at the Cincinnati Zoo and Botanical Garden, but he's also a personal gardener, and as Marianne and I are. And like, has either of you tried to do that thing where you have bulbs that maybe came out of a pot or the Cincinnati Zoo didn't want anymore, and so you've got them and you're not going to plant them and you want to like keep them as if you're as if you know what to do over the summertime. Keep them dry. I don't know, air circulation. Do we have who has experience with that? I do not.
Yeah, I do a couple different things with the tulip bulbs. I have probably more like 20 years ago, being even more frugal than I am now, saved them, tried to bulk them up again, in a nicer bed. Not saved them once they came out of the ground, just put them somewhere where I could bulk them up again. And I finally decided that that wasn't worthwhile to me, especially if the deer came and took the heads off of them. That, just with regards to tulips. And my soils weren't cooperating, even though I was giving them more food, more fertilizer. But with daffodils and allium, daffodils especially, I've got some sitting in my potting shed right now, waiting for me to get home because I am at my mother's house in California at the moment. And they're waiting for me to get home and put them in the ground. And I dug those. There's still foliage to tell me where they were. Dug them a dry location that's fairly ventilated in old bulb bags and just hung them from the ceiling there. And they look pretty good. I mean, they're not these huge plump warriors, but I think they're probably going to be fine. And even if they're not fine this year, they'll be fine next year. I mean, the year after.
Yeah. Think of the energy that's in those bulbs, that even reduced as they are, that's still just a ton of plant dynamite waiting to happen. I think bulbs are probably about the most resilient group of plants you could even think about growing. I haven't done any of the tricks. I have planted them in the worst conditions, very late in the year, could barely even cover, fill the holes behind them. And they just come back and they do great. I'm not saying that's going to be the case with everything, but like Marianne said, daffodils for sure, alliums for sure. Talk about minor bulbs. Just they are such a great group of plants. I think they're undervalued because they're so cheap, ironically enough. You can buy so many all at once in the back of catalogs. But I've moved plants and like pulled them out, put them in pots. I'm talking about like a big perennial that happened to have some bulbs mixed in with the soil. Planted that thing somewhere else, and the perennial died, but those bulbs show up.
Because they're that tough.
I think so. Yeah.
So Marianne, you're in California and it's quite early in the afternoon for you. And yet I just saw you lift a glass of wine to your lips. So congratulations on your day drinking.
Actually, there is a story to this. And it was that I thought, oh, okay, right. We're at 3 o'clock. We're going to do this. And not only am I not day drinking, I haven't been drinking at all while I've been here because I thought, well, this is a good time to just sort of have a little break and do lots of exercise and just be incredibly virtuous. And so I went looking for a drink, and raiding my parents' drink cabinet used to be fun. And now there's things like a 6-month-old open bottle of red wine
Ew.
and some ancient bitters from 1965
Oh, God.
probably. And the only thing I could find that would be palatable was
Was what?
Harvey's Bristol Cream is what I
Harvey's
came
Oh,
up
Bristol
no
with.
way.
I am drinking sherry in the middle of the day.
I did,
It was
yeah,
the only thing
yeah,
I
but
could find. Okay, so I think I'm going to want a mince pie in about 5 minutes is the problem. I think that I am going to be sounding extremely sophisticated in about 10 minutes and with a little edge of academic and professor-esque. That's what I'm going to be aiming for.
So it's not a mixed drink, and this is the garden mixer. Good people, this is the garden mixer. I did not contrive to mix a drink tonight, except that I did kill one bottle of Chardonnay and added another. So that's what I have. Scott, what are you drinking?
uh, I'm afraid to even say this, but it's a box red wine
Oh, such a shame when they go downhill, Leslie.
that's pretty old.
Wait, you are not at your mother's house. What's your excuse?
I'm a busy person. We buy the box wine because we're busy. It's like, and then we're busy. We kind of forget about the box wine, and then it's like, you know what? we got to get control of our lives and drink better. And it just never really seems to happen.
Let us all drink better. Cheers.
Yeah.
Okay, actually, I will digress this just for a moment. Box wine.
We weren't digressing.
No, beyond just the drinking.
Mm.
I will say that the Petite Sirah box wine at Trader Joe's is actually fairly decent. And believe me, I've tried them all. Uh, but it is fairly decent if you have to get a box wine. What are you drinking then, Scott? Is it Taylor's or Gallo or
Ripple.
Oh my God.
Is Nighthawk a brand? Like a,
It's the Aldi version of box wine.
no, I don't know what it is.
You know, Leslie, when I was back with Scott at the Plant Trials Day, I think 2 years ago, he took me around Cincinnati and we went to, for the very first time in my life, a drive-through liquor store where you where you drove through like a car wash and there was liquor on both sides of you and the little man came up and said, what can I get for you? And it just all got put in the back of the car and it was a very surreal experience.
Your reaction to that was just hilarious. It was like her eyes got giant, and she's seeing all the possibilities this means for drinking and driving, and I'm trying to explain, this is the latest in alcohol consumption technology. It's something that's probably coming your way because it's such a good idea.
All right, back to bulbs, you people.
Okay, sorry.
Well, were we still on design?
No, I don't know if we've gotten there yet, but
Oh, okay.
but I wanted to talk about tulips because right now we're just sort of talking about the big Darwin hybrids, the big boys, the big luscious silky cups of tulips, and that's what we're talking about disintegrating in the garden. And I was having issues with that. I was having issues with deer. Tulips, I swear, are their absolute favorite springtime food. I was so frugal. I hated spending so much money on them. And so I started going with a lot of the species tulips. I was seeing them more and more in gardens. They're varying sizes, but probably anywhere from 6 to 12 inches. 6 is maybe a little small, but something like that. And so many beautiful leaf shapes and colors and perennial.
In theory, it depends.
Right. If you've got them in the right, very free, usually very free draining soil where they're not going to have that winter wet, that's really crucial. You don't want them sitting in a pond of saturated soil over the winter, but nice gritty soil and where you don't have a vole problem that's going to eat them. That's another issue with them. So it didn't help me with the deer issue, so I started doing them on the inside of the fence that I have from deer, but it allowed me to have them from year to year and to see them start to seed themselves into other little places just in an odd place that they'd spring up. And I love that about them, whereas you'd never have that with the large big boys.
I've had over the last three, no, probably more like 5 or maybe even longer years. I've had so much fun playing with those, and they're pretty cheap. You kind of just sort of dabble in them. I guess I could have done more research to see which ones do what and how but to me, the mystery of it is as much fun as knowing exactly what you'll get. They are just the sweetest little flowers when they come up. The delicacy. It's so unusual. It's so ironic that the species tulips, they have good color, but it's much more pastel, muted. That those plants are the parents of the big Darwin hybrids. It's kind of neat that to see what people have been able to do with that group of plants. But yeah, those species tulips are really cool. I put them in the back again where I have a fence and mostly don't have a deer problem. And I think it's vital that they do get good drainage. They all come from the Caucasus region of the world, where it's dry anyway. So that's very important. But what a
And
great
tell me,
group.
it's the winter wet is bad, but summer wet is bad too.
I was going to say that too.
Yeah, if we
Yeah.
plant these in our garden beds and we have irrigation or we're attentive gardeners, unlike me, or clay soil, so it's, it's unless we get a drought, in which case they're sitting in concrete, maybe that's good. Um, I did not have good luck with these bulbs, listeners, so give them a go because 2 out of 3 of us have. But I don't know, maybe I'll try them again here at this new place. But I ordered a bunch and not much came up. It might have been voles too.
Well, I'll tell you what, Leslie, I think slopes are really good for these bulbs too.
Hmm.
That's a really good way of having the drainage issues sorted.
Hmm.
And you've got that great slope on your
Hmm.
back end, said the bishop to the actress.
Wow.
So, so,
Are
so
you
you
sexually
could,
harassing me?
yes. But you could put them up there in little groupings and just sort of see how they do. Yes, the voles do like these like these bulbs. So it may be that you throw a lot at the problem, and I don't know, but I think it's worth trying because really they add so much. And it's not just pastels. There are some really vibrant colors. I'm trying to think. Clusiana, I think, is one, a yellow and a
Clusiana
red.
is the one I tried, and that was a bright, bright pink.
Yes, of course you did.
I think they need close to full sun as well for that short period of time when they're growing.
But just like any other bulb, all the pressure is off you gardeners for that first year. You've bought something that's been properly cultivated, and that little package is got all it needs inside of it. So you don't, if you want to have tulips and shade, you're going to have tulips and shade because they've already photosynthesized the previous year. I definitely cheated on that the year that my garden was on the big tour, and I'm just like, yes, we will have many, many tulips in deep, deep shade, and it worked. And like a dozen came back the next year. I said, thank you very much for playing my game. And I understand why you, most of your cousins didn't.
That's something to remember when people are garden visiting in the spring and they're in a shady garden and they see this beautiful display of X, is not to look around and go, wow, this is fabulous. They grow in shade. But to say, hey, what sort of year did you plant these? Like last fall? Or did you plant, have they been in situ for 3 or 4 years? So that's important. That's a really important thing. You can get away with not a good amount of shade, but definitely partial shade with a lot of daffodils, which
Oh,
can
yeah.
Yes.
handle it. I think the doubles tend to get bud blast a lot more if they're in, particularly shady place, shady cold place. But a lot of singles seem to do okay. And I know because there was one evening that my friend Louisa Zimmerman Roberts, who Scott knows as a nursery woman out here out there in Virginia, she and I needed to dig up all of these daffodils that were in a really bad place. And there was like 100 of them. And we thought, well, what are we going to do with them? And we'd had 2 gin and tonics by that point. And we put them into a wheelbarrow. We went down to my creek and we just sat there tossing them into the creek like poo sticks. And about a year later, these daffodils are coming up in the woodlands along the creek bed.
Oh my
Along
God.
that my creek that goes through the woods, and you'd see one just popping up here and there. Not all of them. There weren't 100 down there, but a few were, and it was a real testament. They still come up. It still makes me laugh. Makes me think maybe Betty Ford might be a good option for Louisa and I at some point in our lives. But
Poo sticks. I love that analogy. Nothing, not, there's no better game when you have a stream and a bridge than poo sticks.
exactly.
Has either of you ever grown I don't know if I'll say this right, the viridiflora type of tulip where it has the green striae in it? Like sometimes it's pink and green. Of course, I love that. Or green on green, white on green. I have heard that those are a little bit more perennial than some. Any opinions?
I haven't grown them, but wow, gorgeous white with the green sort of, it's not the calyx. What is it?
Um, Siebel?
Oh, sepals. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes. What's wrong with me? See, this is the problem. Us second career people.
Well, not only that, but the wine, of course. Or in your case, the Harvey's Bristol
I'm
Cream.
drinking sherry. It should be adding about 20 points to my IQ right now.
Should it though? I don't know. All right. So the ones that come back are Well, you just got to consider yourself lucky, I think. And you can pat yourself on the back and tell yourself that you're a good gardener. Probably you just got a little bit lucky with your soil and your irrigation isn't too strong going on in the summer, but it's fun. I mean, I just consider it a bonus. I also consider it something that I'm just not expecting, right? I mean, tulips are like an annual.
And you kind of forget some of this, with these minor bulbs and these smaller things that don't cost you a lot of money. You kind of forget that you did it.
Yeah.
And by the time May rolls around, you're surprised by all these things, and it's just such a wonderful, delight to go out there and go, oh, what is it? Wait, oh yeah, and it's just this little thing that's so beautiful.
It's one of the real advantages of our pre-dementia state that we're in right now, where we just don't remember what we did. And then, wow, wasn't I clever?
Yeah, or if it was something bad you did, you just can deny it completely honestly because you just don't remember.
What was I thinking?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking. I didn't do that.
Hey, you two, speak for yourself. We're supposed to be talking about design.
Okay.
What is wrong with you, Leslie? Come on, corral these cats.
Okay. Here we go, cats. Let's be herded and let's talk about design. But before we start, can I just tell you a story of how not to?
Okay.
Absolutely.
Is it going to involve your spiral?
No, but that spiral was so cool. You hush. All right, this is even worse. I am a brand new gardener. I am 25 years old. I have had a baby who naps all the time.
I hate you.
I have made the dinner. I've paid the bills. I'm just like, I probably should have stayed at work. I did not, but that is what made me a gardener. I'm like, what's out here? Let's see how this works. And in my first fall, I sprang for, I think it was a dozen tulip bulbs, 12 of them. And I thought that was a really good thing to do. And I planted them with my little trowel each in its own hole, approximately 12 inches apart from the next one. So a row of soldiers. And when it came up in spring, I was I was amazed that anything came up. And then I was so disappointed in myself and just like, oh, okay, this is cool. This is how not to plant tulips because they look like it was done by, well, the person that I was, like a penurious beginner who really didn't get it. So let's improve from that look, can we?
Absolutely. And that doesn't just go for tulips or daffodils. That goes for all bulbs, I think. I was at the Bulb Dixter Planting Symposium no, 2 Novembers ago. And the way that they framed planting bulbs was, what is the bulb wanting to do? What is it going to do given its druthers? How will it seed? Where will those seeds fall? Where will the water take the seeds? How will it get bigger? How will it become a bigger clump? And use those ideas to inform your planting of the bulbs so that they look extremely naturalistic. And I think that it's our tendency without a lot of experience to plant exactly as you're talking about, because I have a lady who came and helped me when I was gifted this miraculous gift of 2,000 snowdrops in the green a couple years ago. And so I finally sprung for somebody to help me to put them in because I couldn't do it all. And I didn't even think about giving her instruction on it because in my head, of course, a little here, a little there, but here, this bed. And when I came back out, I was working in a different place in the garden and they were beautifully symmetrically planted in beds. And I went, sort of, oh, that's great. And they're in the ground, but oh man. But I thought, well, next year, all I'm going to do is as they start to come up, a lot of them I'm going to dig up anyway and see if I've got babies and replant the onesies. So I'll just pull a few of them up from different places and we'll start again instead of ripping it all out and starting again there. But it was hard on my eyes because they were in the green to see this regimented soldier thing. But I think that's what most people instinctively want to do. Symmetrical. Go asymmetrical all the way, baby.
That's what I think too. There's that old piece of advice where somebody says, well, just take a handful of bulbs and toss them, and they will land in such a natural state that you will be so
Well, hold on a
pleased.
minute.
I know. I think that's a terrible
I'm
idea.
not really a proponent
I
of the
do too.
think like a bulb movement, or the like,
Hey, wait a
what
minute.
would my bulb do kind of
You can
conversation.
speak when you're spoken
No,
to.
no, this is my turn. So, you know, here's the thing: when you have a bulb like snowdrops, where you could obviously afford 2,000 of them, being as frugal as Marianne is,
I was
but
gifted them.
She never bought them.
of course not. The thing is, you can toss them up in the air and they will think like a bulb for you, because the ones that go where they don't belong won't live very long, and the other ones will, and will happily reproduce and have millions and millions of baby snowdrops. But I mean, it's one of those things. It's the end of the season, and let's be real. You're tired. Your gardening time is coming to a close, and you've probably bought more than you need, or really want at that point. But still, you have them, and it's like you just want to get them in the ground, and you know within reason, like going to where they're going to grow, what their cultural needs are, going and taking care of that. And if you have 50 of, well, let's not say 50, but 25 of them, kind of cast them about a little bit, they will roll around, kind of go in more or less a natural drift. And then you can take the ones that don't, that drift underneath the rows, or, underneath things that you don't really want them at. And you can take those and move them to somewhere better. And I think that works really, really well most of the time. The ideal would be, yeah, to like study every detail of the bulb and know like, oh, these seeds float and they will wind up like on the side of a stream. You can take it as far as you want to, but you can also just look at pictures of bulbs and know what their cultural needs are and kind of just sort of make it work. you know
Yeah.
Well, some of us have higher standards than others of us, obviously. And I think that you can throw them up in the air. Okay, I'll give you that. But then when they come back down, I'm trying to help him. The problem is the man has been jaded and hypnotized by 800,000
Mm.
bulbs in en masse. He can hardly even think straight
That's
when it
true.
comes to bulbs.
Oh, yeah.
So, he's got Kuganov on the brain, and
Ooh,
um,
Who?
what?
so quick, come on, the Netherlands, the incredible bulb displays are the 8 million bulbs.
Is that near Holland?
Yes, it's somewhere near Holland, darling.
That's in Europe, Scott.
Oh, yeah.
In Europe, that area.
Mhm.
But I think then just it doesn't take any time at all to sort of look at where they've fallen, if that's what you've done, and just maybe move, say, 5 or 6 into a clump. Whereas let's call that the mother clump. That's where the mother clump is. And then maybe one here, a foot away, and then 2 down a little bit lower, and 3 over here, and then maybe another mother clump there, rather than one, 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 where they're going to go when you throw them in the air. And that is what Fergus Garrett and the team at Dixter call high-low planting density.
That's interesting, because that in the last couple of years, that's exactly what I've done without knowing that I was doing it that way.
Oh, you
You
are
know,
such a genius.
well, just a natural genius, just.
Hmm.
But I mean, seriously, it's like if you just picture the final product of what these will look like in a bed, and try to make it make sense. It's not that hard, and you got to like figure it out with the rest of your garden too. You don't want these plants to argue with what's already there. You got to work around them, like to think like a bulb. Maybe this is sort of like right up against the base of a tree. It doesn't make sense. So you're going to pull them out a little bit. Although with Scilla, I swear you can plant those on rocks and they will grow and form a nice carpet. I've seen where those are Scilla was planted under a beech tree, a full-grown beech tree with the shallowest of roots, all interlaced. There's really no open soil at all, and somehow I don't know how, but that Scilla is growing there, and it's a beautiful green carpet with blue flowers in the spring for just a few weeks, and then it just disappears again.
So cool.
But you see, I think with Leslie's back end, for lack of a better term, that hillside that she has,
That again? She's obsessing.
oh, it's so tight, so tight.
What?
I
Jeez.
feel like she has a magnificent opportunity to think like a bulb. If she thought about maybe up at the very top, something that was up there that seeded into the cracks and crevices, and where would those be? Because it's a downhill situation, and that's how does the water going to run? How would the seeds find themselves? How would they get jostled? That type of thing. I think you've got a really exciting opportunity to do some pretty cool design things instead of just sort of throw bulbs up there or do a big planting of X. I think that think like a bulb can really help you out a bit.
But Leslie, just to spite her, you need to plant them in a soldier's row, what alternating the colors.
No, just spell out her initials on
Oh,
the hillside. MW.
actually, Leslie,
Take
would
a
you
photo- And then a little spiral underneath
would
of
you
it.
please do that where you do like one yellow, one red, one yellow, one red every foot? That would make me have such a good chuckle in the spring.
In honor of my 1986 planting.
Okay,
Yeah.
so actually, let's talk about our the worst way we think you can plant bulbs. Besides, you've already done.
Like I did in
Yes, your
1986.
1986 planting, so that's done. Scott's, what's the worst way you've ever planted bulbs, design-wise?
Honest to God, I think it was the alternating colors soldier row at my first house, first learning the garden, or not even learning the garden, just doing something I didn't even know how to do. I don't know why it is, but we've mentioned it before, but that is like a human being's natural inclination. You know how like little kids when they draw a house
Yeah.
for the first time and the chimney goes off crooked because they can't make it at a non 90-degree angle.
Right.
I think that's like what that is to kindergartners. Bulbs alternating colors in a straight row is to young adults with their first bulb planting.
So nobody should feel bad if they've done what I did in
No,
1986, except you should
no.
feel a little bit bad because I felt bad in 1987. So just a little bit bad, and maybe we fix
You
this
should
problem.
only feel bad if you don't think that there's a problem. And that's the only
Yes, if you repeat the mistake, then you should
those
feel
bulbs
bad.
should have come out and you should have looked at them and gone, oh my Lord, what did I do?
What?
I can do better.
And getting out your wallet too. I mean, what business did I have buying 12? I mean, in 1986 dollars, who knows what I spent?
Oh, if you had invested that money, you'd be a millionaire right
Oh,
now.
hey, 12 bulbs. I get it. There were times I was like, I don't have money for bulbs. I do not have money for bulbs. Or maybe I have money for 6 bulbs in a window box. So I totally get that.
It was like bulbs or Harvey's Bristol Cream, one or the other, not both.
Oh, can I tell you something good? Here's the opposite problem, sort of. When my children both had their new houses, they're new property owners, and I want to garden on the properties, but I know I shouldn't. But instead, I buy them like, I don't know, hundreds of bulk. I had my daughter select for herself. I select for my son because his taste is questionable. And they had so much fun planting hundreds of bulbs. They got, their spouses to help, and they all came up, and it was so much fun. I never did that again. They continue to do it every year. It's just like so cool. Like they're hooked.
That's how you do it.
That's very
Yeah.
cool. Doesn't anybody want to know
Yeah.
about my biggest mistake, or is it that you don't believe I could make one?
Oh, you never make
Oh,
mistakes, but try to make one up.
yeah, let's hear it.
I would say it's definitely and very, very early on the ring of bulbs, it was daffodils in this case, around the mailbox. Just that one
Oh,
little,
yeah.
just accentuating the symmetrical and the look, this is a ring. I don't do rings anymore around anything. And because I've done too many rings in the past and thought, ooh, or I think really it's looking at other people's gardens and going, don't draw attention to that. Like the wellhead or in the front of people's lawns in suburbia where they will plant junipers around it. So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
here's the,
Yeah.
don't do that. Don't draw attention.
Yeah, it's like I'm going to screen this thing, and by doing the screen that you do, it's like just making people look at it.
What the hell is that?
And there's nothing
Yeah.
like bulbs to make that really clear. Even if you have a tree in your front yard and you just put the bulbs around the base of the tree in a circle, it's there's something about it. I think asymmetrical patterns work so well in garden settings because garden is nature. It should be. We should be moving towards that. And having this beautiful, in my mind, in my opinion, humble opinion, we should be moving towards that as nature in our gardens. And nature doesn't plant that way.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But there's a quaint kind of corniness of that, when you drive past a house and you see like the ring of tulips around a tree or something, or the tipped over wheelbarrow with annuals spilling out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the toilet bowl with the flowers on
They just sort of make me smile. Because not everybody's going to be a great gardener, but they should still garden.
Oh, Scott, you know I'm completely on board with you on this one.
Yeah, sure.
I know my words are making everybody feel inferior that they're not doing things the way that I'm doing them.
No, we're not feeling inferior. We're just feeling you think you're superior.
That's it. You nailed it.
Yes, you're right. Everybody should just do whatever the heck makes them happy. And if they look at that ring and they say, "Oh, look at my mailbox. It's spring. Everything's great," then that's awesome. But if you are actually trying to do something else, if you're trying to move on from that, and I mean, even the word saying "move on" it's too
Yeah, let's be
pretentious.
clear. Marianne thinks you are a very beginner
No,
gardener.
no, because you're going to have lots of, you might, it's just design, isn't it? I mean, there are stages in design, there's stages in cookery as well. So I might make like the best poached egg in the entire world. And I might only ever want to eat poached eggs, but there's going to be that next level of, ooh, why don't we throw some hollandaise off on it, put it on an
That's a
English
great
muffin, and well,
analogy.
thank you very much, Scott. And some
Yeah,
ham.
it really is because, we need to cook to eat, and some people cook just well enough to eat, and that's fine. I mean, that works for them. But if they can take it to that next level, it's such an increase in quality of life to just start dabbling in the little improvements. And you keep at it, and next thing you know, you're putting together really good dinners. And same thing with the garden. It's just by just knowing you can do better and learning what you need to a little bit at a time to do better, you can really make a difference, not only like in your own garden, but think of gardens are a cool thing because often they're out there where other people can see them and it makes a difference in their lives too.
I just want to put in for the record that I'm really bitter that Scott put that in such a friendly, affable way, and I put it in such a pretentious, condescending way. That I mean, I'm having a problem with that
Wait,
myself.
isn't that the way you guys roll? I thought that
That's our
was
shtick,
I,
the whole
Marianne.
thing.
but it upsets me that I can hear that you are being incredibly affable, and everyone going, "Oh, that's right, Scott," and you basically said the same damn thing that I just said.
Huh.
That's so wrong.
It's that Midwestern charm. It's
I
just
have
that.
been battling this all my life. Damn it.
All right, parting shots on design, because we're going to wrap up this one. And in our next episode, we're going to talk about the real meat and potatoes of how to get it done. So, design, design, design. I think whatever makes you happy, do it. But I also wish for you that you don't need to be frugal and that you can go to Cincinnati and get some really cheap bulbs because more is better in my mind. Other thoughts?
Well, for the more is better thing, the nice thing about bulbs is they increase pretty rapidly too.
Well, not all,
Especially,
but
well, not
daffs.
all, but like daffodils will give you a bigger group, and you can start to divide them at a pretty early on, stage. The minor bulbs are sort of like that too. So that sort of resolves that issue a little bit.
We should get into this a little bit more in the next episode where we're talking about actually getting out the shovel. But I think that when you get out the shovel with those bulbs that are just finishing up, so they're still in the green, they're beginning to go past. I think that's a great time to, oh, wow, I really didn't like the design of what I did. That's going to be my mother group, and I'm going to have some other little satellite groups over here, some unmothered children, some unloved children outside of the mother group. It's especially fun with the little guys, every year with snowdrops. I'm like, and there's my group of snowdrops, and it has multiplied. I will now lift it. I will put a third right back in that same hole, and I will take another third and put it somewhere else, and another third and put it somewhere else. And that's digging in the dirt. That's real culture, but it's also design, right?
Yeah, and you can do a third and a third and a third, but you can be really bold and do onesies with snowdrops. And it's hard because you lose you have a year where the next year you've just got onesies coming up. But you have just, I don't even know the math on that. You have just made many, many more. Snowdrops do just fine throwing one in that hole, and they're going to make at least two by next year, and et cetera, et cetera. So if you really want to increase your snowdrops, then definitely put them as onesies. And some of the biggest, like Nancy Goodwin down in Montrose, they're constantly digging those up and they're putting them in onesies. And what I was going to say about design is that different bulbs, you can have the same bulb, let's say, but it fulfills different functions in your property on at your place. You might have an area that you want to have masked for shock and awe, but you might also have areas that you just want to be a little bit more demure with. I think that recognizing that, and that might be how you buy bulbs, but I have every year bulbs that I buy, like that I call fodder. They're lawn fodder. I buy big bags of daffodils, and I'm not really concerned about what they are. They're usually like a Dutch Master, Ice Follies, or something large. And they go into areas where I just want to have daffodils. And I don't really care that they're from the best company. I just want good bulbs. But that's very different from the order that I might put in for bulbs that are going to be in my beds. So you can have both.
All right, very cool. So all about design. This is the Garden Mixer with Marianne Wilburn and Leslie Harris, but Scott Beuerlein has been our guest.
I'm not sure he's working out.
I mean, should we have him on again? Should we ask him? I don't know.
I don't, it's
Let's ask the listeners.
This second segment is iffy. I think I'm going to need to refill my drink.
Me too.
Before we depart from this one, Marianne, was there anything that you wanted to follow up with about our last one?
Oh
I
yeah.
forgot to look at that
Yeah, a couple
list.
things, and we should have done that in the beginning. We were talking about what we weren't talking about it. I just mentioned it in passing, Miss Wilmot's ghost,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and you thought that it was important enough that we should say what it is. And Miss Wilmot was a 19th century gardener in England, in Essex, and she loved Eryngium giganteum, which is sea holly, and it's a specific cultivar which I've never grown. Scott, have you grown Eryngium giganteum?
I have not.
Not the giganteum for me, but that blue one I
The big
have.
blue, that's what I grow.
Isn't that
That's
the,
Zabelii,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, she loved it so much that she used to walk around people's gardens and take some seeds out of her pocket and just throw them. And they wouldn't, and she wouldn't tell people. And so it became that particular, I don't know if giganteum became Miss Wilmot's ghost or if there's an actual cultivar that's Miss Wilmot's ghost. I don't think it's important, but that was the idea behind it. I was telling Leslie last time, Scott, that I wandered around your garden taking seeds from your peony obovata and scattering them around. And you were saying that you'd seen them coming up.
Not knowing that I've been doing the same thing. So there's your ghost and mine both out there all over my garden.
That's great.
Yeah. And by the way, two of the ones that I did from your seeds have come up now. So that's very cool.
Well, there's such lovely plants. They're the
Oh,
best.
I love those peonies.
Yeah.
They're so cool. Anything else from last week that we need to, I
Yeah,
can't
you
remember.
wanted to clarify that the viburnum that I didn't know, blue muffin, was a dentatum. Do you grow blue muffin, Scott?
Yeah, that's a pretty common one in the Midwest, at least. For a time, it was thought, oh, maybe because of the name, it was a dwarfer version. Not true.
Oh,
It's full size, full blast, regular size dentatum.
oh, I thought it was supposed to max out at about 6 feet, which is how I used it in designs that I left, and I don't know how they're doing. Sorry, good people.
Wow, the worst of the industry.
Change your number.
Yeah, actually, we should have had Scott's comments on last time's episode because we were talking about berries, and Leslie is not a fan in gardens.
Oh, well, no, that's a little harsh. I'm just sort of like, really? Berries?
What? Berries are the best.
They're okay.
And somebody on Instagram actually said that they were Team Berry and also talked about the peony foliage of Sarah Bernhardt, because that was another thing that we were discussing was peony foliage, and does it color, does it not? A lot of people cut it back, it gets mildew, but some of it colors very well. And they were saying that Sarah Bernhardt, which is one of the old standards, that it colors really well.
So with the mildew thing, y'all, now is that just, yeah, we got mildew and it's fall and don't worry about it? Or do you actually need to fuss about that and get rid of that foliage or you'll have more and more mildew? What's the science on that?
I don't know about the science on that, but it's more summer that people go, okay, the mildew is a problem,
Yeah.
and I don't want to see it. So they cut the foliage back, and fair enough if it's, later into the summer. But the mildew doesn't hurt the plant.
Hmm.
It offends mine eyes, but it doesn't hurt the plant. And it
Okay.
tends to be when you've got real dry conditions.
Which is ironic because you would think it would be moist.
Right.
Yeah, at Monarda, and it also happens to phlox a ton. All right, well, good. So we've got that all sorted, and yeah, I think we're going to say goodbye for this one, and we'll see you in a couple weeks to talk more about bulbs and how you actually are going to plant them and divide them and the culture of them and how deep and all those details, right?
Which ones? We're going to talk about what are some really good ones to think about if you're just starting to get into your bulb journey and you want to move beyond tulips and daffodils, where to go first.
Yeah. Scott, thank you for being our inaugural guest.
It was so much fun.
So much fun.